Well, hello and welcome to the Bumper to Bumper podcast. I am Dave Riccio, co-creator of Bumper to Bumper Radio and your host of the Bumper to Bumper podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, John Riggle. Together with 75 years of combined experience, we are putting you in the know when it comes to your car. Well, John, one of the things that is people don't take care of enough on their vehicle, and you would think it is. We've been preached to for decades by oil companies.
Yeah.
But what would you say is the best thing you could do for your car that is often overlooked and not really paid attention to intentionally?
Keep the oil changed in it.
Keep the oil changed in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked in prior shows about the 5,000-mile oil change, and I'm going to preach that over and over and over again until something changes. But at this point, nothing's changed in the last, I would say, decade.
Yeah.
5,000-mile oil change is a good idea. But we've got oil reminders or service reminders from the car to tell us to change the oil. And then we've got, sometimes it's a reminder that pops up. Sometimes it's an oil life percentage. Depending on the brand of car, they all do a little bit differently.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest problem with those?
They run the intervals out longer than is probably necessary. You could actually shorten those intervals quite a bit and really be safe. Some of those intervals get really long. 15,000 miles is a real long time depending on how the car is operating. They're pretty sophisticated. They're not foolproof.
They are not foolproof.
Yep.
So this one comes up because we got a vehicle in the shop right now, and turned the check engine light on. So the lady came in. Why was that check engine light on?
Had a cam sensor performance, cam sensor timing performance code that came up, and with this particular code, the first thing we do is check the oil in the car because, I don't know, probably 90% of the time that when we see these codes, it's because the cars are low on oil, the oil pressure goes low, the cam timing changes. You won't necessarily get a low oil pressure warning light, but there's insufficient oil pressure to make the cam timing work correctly, so we wind up with the check engine light instead, and quite often, all we have to do is add oil to the engine to get them back.
Light.
Yeah, and we get check engine light go up.
But that means it's starved a bit for oil, and it's not really running its optimal performance.
Yeah.
In these late model cars, they have variable valve timing, and that's run off of, and many times, oil pressure that makes that system work.
Yeah.
So you got to have plenty of oil in the car. So this one turned the check engine light on. Where the heck does the oil go? Because this car had no leaks. And I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm asking. This car had no leaks, so where does that engine oil go?
This engine's burning. It's going through the combustion chamber one way or another. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything dramatically wrong with the car. We can pull oil through a failed PCV system, crankcase ventilation system. So there's things that could cause it. But sometimes it's a hard determination to make. In this case, we put this particular car on an oil consumption test to verify
how much oil it's using.
Yeah, that's.
So we're not done. We're not done with it yet.
Yeah.
We changed the oil in the car. We put a good factory filter on it. We used exactly the oil the car required. The exact spec, and we set the trip meter to 0. And we told the lady, go drive the. We marked the dipstick so we're exact. We told her to go drive it 500 miles. And to ignore the check engine light if it comes on. If the oil pressure light come on, timeout, pull over.
Pull over and stop.
But what we're looking for is how much oil is it consuming over what length of time?
Right.
To know if we have a major engine problem. You've already verified we don't have any excessive oil going into the PCV system. So you've checked all the obvious things, but we got to get some sort of idea. Now we sent her out, and the first thing she did is bring the car back.
Yeah, like 60, 80 miles later. With a check engine light on, and we're like, okay.
But it definitely used some oil, so it's.
I was actually a little surprised.
How much oil
I pulled the stick out, and it was a half a quart lower in 80 miles, I was like, wow, and there's no evidence of it. There's no oil in the tailpipe, and we have to be careful because even though we're burning it, we know we're pretty sure on this one it's burning oil for one reason or another. There's no oil in the tailpipe. You can't see it because of the catalytic converter.
Right.
So we get so much combustion going on there. It used to be in the old days you could wipe your fingers through the tailpipe and it'd be black and oily. And in this case, no, you're not going to see that. This one's still in the middle of the process, but we want to see where this is going.
Yeah, so engines consume oil, and even a healthy engine with nothing wrong is still going to consume some oil at a very slow rate, maybe.
Yeah.
But the more the engine ages, the more oil it will consume.
Right.
Because everything is not as close to that factory
right.
tolerance.
And you have to think about that amount of consumption. I mean, what is normal? What's abnormal? Okay.
Right.
Most manufacturers will put you at a quart per 1,000 miles for warranty purposes. If it's they'll let you burn a quart, which is a lot.
That's a ton of oil, especially when they're saying,
a quart per 1,000 in 5,000 miles, you just burn up 5 quarts of oil. So by the time you got your next oil change, things
ran out of
well out of oil. So we got to be careful with those kind of numbers. That's kind of high, but for warranty purposes, that's a general number they use. We expect to see oil consumption way less than that. On a good operating car.
Yeah, and I know that, and I'm just thinking back, one of my early jobs, I worked in a lube shop, and we were pretty systematic. We did a good job, that particular lube shop. They don't all run that way, but this one did. And we always noted the oil, before we changed the engine oil, we always noted the level beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
That way, that consumer could see, hey, okay, it was a half a quart, it's been they can kind of get an idea for how much oil the car is burning. How many shops, if you asked them, hey, can you check the oil ahead of time so I know what it was? I don't think shops are doing that.
Most don't. It's really overlooked. It's overlooked. Like I say, 60% of the cars I check, and I check every car that rolls through my bay. I check the oil, and 60% of them are low on oil, by a quart and a half.
So as the car ages, the engine is going to wear some more. Means some more oil is going to get past the rings and into the combustion chamber and burn up in combustion and send out the tailpipe.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose oil that way. The other way you're going to lose oil is through leaks. Yep. Sometimes you got a leak and maybe you're ignoring leaks, and hey, sometimes you are. Some leaks you can maybe ignore a little bit, but
sometimes people don't know. Yeah. If you're not, if you're living in an apartment and you're parking the thing in a park, you don't know if that spot on the ground is your car or somebody else's car. You don't know. So a lot of times people just don't know, and a lot of times if you're going to a quick oil change place, they'll glance at it. They don't fix oil leaks. Yeah, they don't really sell repairs, so they're not really interested in fixing your oil leak, So that's one thing you got to be aware of.
So oil consumption, number one, the wear in the engine, it can get into the combustion chamber. I guess you could have valve seals leaking some oil in.
Yeah, it can be valve seals, it can be rings, it can go different places.
And the other one is the crankcase. Okay, so your engine in the combustion process, you have this explosion that happens. Some of that explosion is going to slip past the rings into the rest of the engine, not necessarily in that combustion chamber.
Right.
So there's pressure that builds up in the engine, and what the engine does is it vacuums some of that back in and sends it back into the intake of the engine.
Right. Yep.
So essentially, if you got a PCV or positive crankcase ventilation system that's not working right, you could be losing oil that way in the combustion chamber.
Yeah. In the old days, if you had a PCV valve that stuck open, you could just draw a whole bunch of oil out of the crankcase, send it right into the combustion chamber and out the tailpipe. A lot of the late model cars have these breather assemblies. What we want to do is keep the crankcase in the car a little bit below atmospheric pressure. So we've got just a slight amount of what we would call a vacuum. And that helps prevent oil leaks, right? So we've got a negative pressure. That's a good thing. So we have to have some way to ventilate the crankcase. There's some sophisticated ways to do that with these breather assemblies that built into the valve covers and stuff. And a lot of times when those fail, they'll fail to the point where they draw a lot of oil through the PCV system and burn it. And you don't want to replace an engine for something as simple as a crankcase breather.
Yeah, so if somebody makes that mistake diagnosing it, condemn an engine when in fact
People want to pull the trigger real quick when they see excessive oil consumption. They want to go, the rings are bad,
Yep.
And back in the day, it was real common. Now we have some manufacturing issues. We had issues with the Hyundais where they had some manufacturing issues, and they bought lots and lots of engines because the rings didn't work right. That was a design issue or execution and in production issue. But
so one of the main reasons, and I would say most cars, the engine oil is changed not enough. I don't find too many people. I mean, some people they're just regimented.
Yep.
They're getting their 5,000 mile oil change regardless of whatever the warning says on the dashboard, which those people are good. They don't have to see me for something expensive.
I get it. Oil changes are expensive. Every time I go to buy a case of oil for my car, I'm like, wow, this stuff keeps going up and up and up. It's expensive. But
it is expensive, and it's also just a matter of having time to get it down to the shop. I know they offer some quick lane type stuff, which, they're not technicians necessarily working on the car, but they've been trained to change engine oil. So it's a different type of. I like to see a good certified. Mechanic.
Here's my problem with a lot of services like that. A lot of services. One of the most important services you can get is an oil change. That can be one of the most expensive services if it's done wrong. Somebody leaves a drain plug loose. You just bought a motor, okay? Or somebody bought one. It could be a genuine hassle. So my beef with that has always been the guy I want doing my oil change is the most experienced, best guy in the shop. Same with brakes.
Right.
I really don't want somebody doing my brakes that really doesn't have the experience to know the variations and the differences and the subtleties to doing the brakes on the cars. So in the industry as a whole, we kind of get that backwards. We just assume that this is easy. Anybody can do this.
Yes.
Those are important services. So I kind of wrestle with that.
And you want the right set of eyes looking underneath your car. You want somebody who's seasoned, has some experience, knows what they're looking for, can spot things, can head off expensive repairs ahead of time.
That's your opportunity to find things is during the oil change. That's why you find people run specials on oil changes. It's an opportunity for a legitimate shop to find things wrong with your car that you may not know about.
Right.
There's issues with people, being overly aggressive with that and stuff. But really, that's an opportunity. I mean, I take every opportunity when I'm doing an oil change on my car. I'm going to glance at the brakes. I'm going to rotate the tires, check the suspension pieces. Look for anything out of the ordinary. That's my opportunity because the rest of the time I'm just driving it.
Yes. So this is your takeaway. Engines consume oil.
Yep.
And the cheapest insurance you can do for your car is regular engine oil changes with the right oil, quality shop that's doing it. Can't underestimate that, and that's a whole nother segue.
And you know what? If you have the ability to do it yourself, periodically check the oil in your car. Maybe every 2 weeks or so. Go out, pop the hood, pull the dipstick out, see if there's any oil in it. Just take a look. Take a look at the coolant. See if the coolant's full in the bottle. Just... That's your opportunity.
That's another one you see is low coolant on a lot of these cars that come in the bay. So low engine oil and low coolant.
Yep.
Can't underestimate the importance of regular oil change. Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Bumper to Bumper podcast. We look forward to seeing it again. Well, hello, I'm Dave Riccio, your host of the Bumper to Bumper podcast, and I would like to thank you for tuning in. If you want one of your car questions to be answered on our podcast, tap the link in the description for a chance to have your question featured. And while you are there, we would love for you to like and subscribe to see more Bumper to Bumper podcasts in the future.